make a couple of announcements. The first one is related to a new webinar that we will have next week. Will be a special webinar on transfer of technology that will be held on Thursday at 3:30 p.m. So you are all invited to participate, and this seminar or this webinar has been organized by the Transfer of Technology Office of the CIBER, but it's open to anyone interested in attending. You can have more details on the contents of this webinar in the website of CIBER and CIBERNED. By July 21st will be our last webinar before the summer break. But if you are interested in looking at the webinars which are already organized for the last part of the year, starting mid-September, the whole program is already available in CIBERNED website. So I'll invite everyone to take a look to the list of upcoming webinars there. So as probably most of you or all of you are already familiar with the format of this webinar series. So we will have a presentation of around 35 to 40 minutes, and then we will have some time for discussion. If anyone is interested in making a question, please either just raise your hand using the application, or just send me a message through the chat, and I will give you the opportunity to do the question yourself. Let me also say before starting that this webinar will be recorded, and ideally in the next few weeks the record will be available also at the CIBERNED website if anyone is interested in double checking later on. Okay, so having said all this, it is for me a pleasure to introduce all of you to Pascual Sánchez Juan. Pascual is a neurologist who did a Master of Science in Genetic Epidemiology at the Erasmus University at Rotterdam, where he also did his PhD. And later on, he moved to Santander, to the Marqués de Valdecilla Hospital, where he's been the head of the Cognitive Impairment Unit and also the scientific director of the Valdecilla Biobank. Since last August 2021, he's been appointed as the scientific director at the Fundación Cien in Madrid, where he's been working since then. So Pascual will talk us today about new diagnostic approaches in dementia, and would like to thank Pascual for his willingness to share with us his work, and all of you for attending this webinar. So Pascual, please go ahead. You can share your screen and start with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
great.
We'll see the not only the slide, but also the second slide as well at the same time.
Yeah. Let me.
If you put it in the full screen, it will be only the.
Yeah. Okay. I think now you can see the.
Yes.
Just one, right? Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Miguel, and thanks to all of you for being at the other side on San Fermin. This is a picture of Fundación Cien. This is quite a unique center, Fundación Cien, because as you all know, we are sited inside a nursing home, one of the the two specific nursing home for dementia patients, and this give us unique opportunities to do research with the individuals that are part of the residency. Actually, as Alberto Rábano presented, in Salamanca, we have a core to study these individuals, and we have, for a large proportion of them, we have a brain donation in the end. So we have the unique opportunity to correlate the brain findings with the clinical trajectories. And I would like to start my presentation by showing you one of the patients, one of the individuals that was in the residency and donated the brain in the end. She was a female of 83 years when she died, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and vascular pathology, mixed dementia. She started rather early at 67. She was diagnosed, and she spent 7 years in the nursing home. When she died, can you see my pointer? Okay, she had a tremendous atrophy. As you can see here, only 118 grams weighted the brain. Indeed, she had vascular pathology. You can see here a small vessel pathology, and also she had an infarction here in the sternal pallidum. And then she had Alzheimer's disease. As you can see, these are amyloid plaques. Here you see in a large perspective, and here you can see with more detail the plaques, the fibrillary plaques, and also amyloid angiopathy, quite profuse. And she had also tau pathology, neurofibrillary tangles. You can see here in the amygdala, she had in the end Bragg stage 6. And Alberto, as you know, Alberto is very interested in different pathologies. He also tested alpha-synuclein, and she categorized this patient as Bragg stage 5 for Lewy body pathology. So in addition to Alzheimer's disease and vascular pathology, he had Lewy body pathology, and this is the hippocampus. In the hippocampus, Alberto also diagnosed hippocampal sclerosis in this patient. And additionally, when he looked at the amygdala, he could see this deposit of TDP43 pathology, fulfilling criteria for late limbic predominant age-related TDP43 and encephalopathy. And finally, these deposits of phosphorylated tau and these granular deposits are in the astrocytes mainly, are very characteristic of ARTAC. And that you can see here in the temporal lobe. So in only one patient, Alberto could diagnose 5 neuropathological entities. And you may think that this is an extraordinary case, but as Alberto showed in Salamanca, and I also took this slide from his presentation. Actually, this is the norm, at least in our population. This slide shows each of these colors are related to one pathological staging of one neuropathologically variable. In blue you have the Bragg, in orange you have the cerebrovascular pathology, Lewy body, and each of these bars are the individuals that we have in our cohort. And as you can see, there is no such thing as pure Alzheimer's disease. So the majority of our patients has mixed pathology with 2 or 3 or even 4, or like the case in this patient, even 5 different neuropathological diagnoses. So this, I wanted to show you this to give you an idea of the reality that we are facing, especially clinicians, if we want to really do a precise diagnosis, trying to capture what is going on in the brain of our patient. And this is very important, because if we really want to have a disease-modifying treatment, we definitely, I think most of us agree in that we have to start as soon as possible, ideally when there are no symptoms. We will have probably to combine several drugs. For sure, I'm afraid one drug is not going to be enough. probably we will have to target the different pathways of that are producing the syndrome, and we may need to tailor this treatment for each patient. And for that, we need much better clinical diagnosis. We need to categorize the risk of the patient as early as possible. We need to determine the pathological components of each patient, and we will need to monitor the drug response for each pathological component, ideally. And we clinicians have to really have in mind all this complexity that is in the brain of our patients, and we have to admit that with our clinical skills, this is not enough, and we definitely need biomarkers. Of course, we have CSF and PET biomarkers, as you all know, in the new research framework. Alzheimer's disease is conceptualized as a pure biological disease, and just with biomarkers, with the ATN system that you can build based on CSF markers and PET and neuroimaging, you can characterize the disease without taking into account the clinical information. But the reality, and if you go to a country like in Spain, the reality is that even for these biomarkers, which are rather, I would say that rather robust and have been tested, and we know that it works in the clinical ground, there are large territorial inequalities, and in some centers, in some communities, the availability of these markers, which are complex from the operational point of view, the availability is so irregular. And the numbers are not very encouraging. And some studies say that it takes more than 2 years to diagnose a patient in Spain, from the beginning of the symptoms to the diagnosis, and it takes on average 2.3 doctors to make this diagnosis. And even worse, some studies say that more than half of the individuals with dementia are not diagnosed in Spain, and this is even worse in the case of mild dementia or mild cognitive impairment, where this proportion of undiagnosed cases is much higher. So we definitely need other biomarkers, and probably we need also better systems to detect dementia in our country and in other countries as well. Well, definitely CSF and PET are not ideal for if we want to do mass screening, population screening. For CSF analysis, we need to have the patient at least one morning and perform lumbar puncture, and PET requires technology, and it's an expensive test that is not available in many places. So they are not practical and not scalable if we want to really do a much larger scale screening. So definitely we need biomarkers that are, of course, sensitive to early pathological events. As we said, early diagnosis is a key point. They have to be accessible, ideally low cost, non-invasive, and repeatable, that we can repeat it without causing a lot of trouble to the patient every certain time. Probably we need also to change the system and move more towards a system based on prevention. Most health systems, not only in Spanish system, is heavily based on specialized medicine hospital for acute patients that focus on dementia diagnosis, but definitely we are not prepared to the tsunami of dementia cases that are coming, and we definitely need to change our approach and focus more on prevention. And as probably you all know, there are studies that says that if we are able to delay the disease onset 5 years, the prevalence will be reduced by half. So I think this is really where we can make an impact in the epidemic of dementia cases that is coming in secondary prevention. And well, in line to that, we mainly Fundación Cien and Fundación ACE, and together with other 19 clinical dementia centers in Spain, we are launching right now a consortium. We call it Precision Medicine Program, the HESCO, which is built on the HESCO, our genetic consortium. And the idea is to try to use all this information that we are collecting in genetic studies and try to use it in the clinic, to bring this to the clinic. And basically what we want to do is a large-scale program with the aim to validate a precision medicine tool in order to identify individuals at risk, so as early as possible. And the idea is that we will focus on three key components. On the one side is cognitive evaluation and online cognitive evaluation, that we can repeat it every certain time. Of course, genetics and blood-based biomarkers. So what we want to do is to build a large research platform coordinated with the Impact Court in Spain. I don't know if you're aware that of the Impact project, which is trying to build right now a sort of a big court of 200,000 individuals across Spain, similar to the UK Biobank. So the idea will be to coordinate with them to build also a large court with generate quality data with gold standards to validate new markers. This court will have available baseline CSF markers, longitudinal neuropsychological and clinical data, imaging data, and we also will get longitudinal blood samples. The idea is to generate scientific evidence with all these quality data that will help authorities to make informed decisions, and we would love to extend and democratize these methods across the country. And the three pillars of our project will be, of course, genetics, blood biomarkers, and first-line screening tools. Genetics, we will use genetics not only to quantify risk, but also we will try to analyze the susceptibility profiles of the individuals in order to be able someday to perform personalized intervention. The blood biomarkers, of course, you know, I gave a talk in Salamanca, and also Inga Ser gave a wonderful talk. We are very hopeful that this technique are really going to be a game changer and will allow us to do large-scale specific and early diagnosis. And the third pillar, and the one that I will focus more in my talk, is what I call first-line screening tools. I include there a bunch of scalable and repeatable tests that will allow to repeat assessment in our patients, providing early diagnosis. And this is, I'm going to show you some of the studies that we've been doing in Valdecilla in the last years. So briefly about genetics, as you all know, thanks to the GWAS, we finally have a tool which is very robust, and we are able to detect which parts of the genomes are related to the diseases. And this is helping us a lot to understand the pathways that are involved in the diseases, specifically in Alzheimer's disease, and this is opening the targets that we have, and it's really been very helpful in advancing our knowledge. But of course, as a clinician, what we want to do is to use this information and to help us in the diagnosis. This is a study that we performed from Valdecilla and also collaborating with other centers like San Pau or also CITA, Pablo Martínez Laje, other regions in Spain. And what we did with the information that we had at that time, that was 2013, before the HESCO started, with the information that we have at that time, with the GWAS available, we perform a polygenic risk score, trying to quantify the risk of Alzheimer's disease progression in individuals with mild cognitive impairment, with different cohorts in Spain of mild cognitive impairments, and we were able to see that individuals with higher quartile or higher risk variables were advances to dementia earlier than individuals with lower risk tertiles. But of course, that was a very primitive attempt, I would say. And then we started the HESCO. The HESCO, as probably you all know, is a consortium that includes more than 20 centers, mainly clinical centers, dementia centers around Spain. And we've been doing genetic analysis. The idea is specifically was to do genomic analysis in the Spanish population because it was a big gap. And we recently published this paper led by Agustín Ruiz and Fundación, where we gathered more than 500,000 samples around, of course, Spain and many other consortiums around the world. And with much more detail and information, now we are able to construct much more precise polygenic risk score. This is part of the paper by Isiar de Rojas, an attempt we made to use this polygenic risk score. And not only quantify the risk, but one interesting thing that we may be able to do with this polygenic risk score is also to assess which are the metabolic pathways, at least the genetic risk, how it is distributed around the different metabolic pathways that are that cluster the different genetic risk variables. That's something that we will also would be interesting to do in our study. And of course, as probably you all know, this year it was a large consortium with important collaboration from the HESCO as well, and that found 42 new loci associated to Alzheimer's disease risk. So we are going to have a lot of information to do new polygenic risk score and try to test them in the clinical setting to see how it helps us to diagnose the patients. And of course, plasma biomarkers, we are really hopeful that this is going to help us a lot to diagnose earlier and more precisely our patient. I already talked about this in Salamanca. As probably you all know now, in plasma or in serum, we can measure the same biomarkers that we do measure in CSF. So we can construct the ATN classification now in plasma, which is a great advance. And we think that this technique is not yet there in the clinic, but it's very close, and especially the Simoa technology, I think, is the closest technology to get to the clinic. Is going to be very helpful. This is data I show. This is from Fundación Cien. Is data I show in Salamanca. And these are areas under the curve, comparing individuals from the Vallecas study with individuals from the Residencia Reina Sofía study, the individuals with definite Alzheimer compared to controls that have been stable for more than 10 years, cognitively stable. And as you can see, we have wonderful areas under the curve for the ratio A-beta 40-40, for the astrocytic markers GFAP, more than 90%, and NFL, and even for total tau, we have quite good areas under the curve. So plasma biomarkers definitely are going to be very, very important in the future of the diagnosis of dementia. And finally, I will focus on some of the studies we've been doing, mainly in Valdecilla, testing different new methods to detect early changes in cognition and early changes related to neurodegeneration. Well, as all you know, the COVID pandemic has been a big problem for research. Many research studies, like for example here in Vallecas or in Valdecilla, we have to stop our studies. And but on the other hand, we had to adapt, and it has somehow created some opportunities. And now we are relying more on digital devices, of course, the online consultation and online testing. So we are developing, and also the general population is now much more familiar with these techniques. So it may have some potential advantage, and the development of what has been called digital markers is really boosting. And it has a lot of advantage. For example, it can give us sequential information more easily, so we don't need the patient to come back. So we can just collect the information from home. And very importantly, can give us more ecological data collection, because what we do in our clinic or in the lab is a very artificial data collection. So if we want to see how the patient performs activities of daily living, the best thing is to assess it at home, right, and not in the clinic. But of course, there are a lot of challenges. This technology has a a lot of challenges. The reliability has to be tested. We have to validate these techniques. They have to be approved by the regulatory agencies. We have the user acceptability, which, as I said, is better now with after the COVID. But for all people, some of this technology, it may not be easy. And of course, there are the issues of privacy and security and the continuous data. Continuous data, of course, is an advantage, but also the analysis of continuous data could be also problematic. And now I would like to describe a little bit the study that we started in Valdecilla in Santander in 2018, and we started a cohort, and the studies I'm going to show you are all based in this cohort. This is a cohort of non-demented individuals. They are all over 55 years old from Cantabria, from the region of Cantabria. And what we did is just to make a call in the press, in the local news, in local television, the radio, and we have a very, I mean, it was very good, the acceptance of the call, and we in 1 week we have more than 400 volunteers that wanted to participate. The court is an open court. We are still recruiting in Santander. We have, I think this is not updated, we have around 270 individuals already fully phenotyped, and the full phenotype includes neuropsychological assessment, sleep assessment, MRI, FDG PET, and plasma collection, especially CSF analysis. And we collect also other samples like plasma DNA and hair for toxicological analysis. And in the CSF, we do the Alzheimer's disease core biomarkers with Fujirebio technique. Basically, we do phospho-tau 181, total tau, and the ratio A-beta 40/40, which allow us to, and this is our gold standard. So what we do is to benchmark the other techniques with the CSF biomarkers. And we follow them up every year. Basically, what we do is a neuropsychological assessment, we do a sleep assessment, and we keep collecting plasma samples. We do not repeat the lumbar puncture, but we take blood every year. And the first study I wanted to show you is made by Sara Lopez, a neurologist from Valdecilla and a PhD student of mine. What we did with Sara was to analyze the sleep data. We collected the sleep data using this actigraphy watch that probably most of you have in your wrist. This is a very cheap actigraphy watch. I think it was like 22 euros in MediaMarkt. And what we did is we gave this to all the participants, and they kept it for 1 week, and we collected after 1 week. And so what we do is to collect data, sleep time during 1 week, the average sleep time during 1 week. That was our main variable. And what we did is to correlate this sleep time with the CSF biomarkers. And what we found is that sleep time was inversely correlated to the total tau and the phosphorylated tau in the CSF. So we found that individuals that sleep less has higher levels of phospho-tau and total tau in their brains. And this association was mainly driven by the ApoE4 individuals. So in the ApoE4 negative, we didn't find this association, but it was especially significant in the ApoE4 individuals. And when we perform a ROC analysis, we found that the area under the curve of only sleep time was 0.71. And if we include in the model ApoE and gender and age, we got an area under the curve of 0.86, which is rather good. Another study that I wanted to share with you is some studies we perform doing objective gait analysis. To do that, we collaborated with another 2 PhD students of mine, Diana Salas Gomez and Mario Fernandez Gorgojo. They work in a movement analysis laboratory unit in the School of Physiotherapy. And what we did is in the lab, we put all these actigraphy devices in strategic areas of each individual, and what we can do with this is to reproduce the pattern of gait, the kinematic of gait. We did this in a subpopulation in our cohort to study the early changes in individuals with Alzheimer's disease pathology, but this data is not analyzed yet. But I will show you some collaboration we did with the team of John Infante, my colleague in Santander. John is following a very interesting cohort of individuals from the Pas Valley. There are individuals in the Pas Valley that have a high prevalence of LRRK2 mutation, and John is following some families with individuals that are carriers of LRRK2 mutation, but they are presymptomatic. They do not have symptoms. And what we did is to do this, this gait analysis, and we performed data scan to these individuals. And what John found was that it was a correlation between some of the parameters of the gait analysis in individuals that were asymptomatic, well, clinically asymptomatic for us neurologists, but they were carrying the mutation. We found a correlation between some of these parameters, like the mean bilateral, like the mean step time, and it was correlated with the mean bilateral striatal DAT binding rate. So we performed a data scan to these individuals, and it was an association between these gait parameters and the rate of DAT binding in the striatal. And when we perform some neuronal network analysis in collaboration with the mathematics departments on the Universidad de Cantabria, we were able to differentiate between the asymptomatic carriers of LRRK2 mutation and healthy controls with an accuracy of 82%. Okay, the next study I would like to show you is related to what we call digital markers, and this is done by another PhD of mine, Maria Garcia, neuropsychologist of Santander unit. And what Maria is very interested in studies is a phenomenon called accelerated long-term forgetting. This comes from the observancy that there is a lot of discrepancy sometimes between the subjective complaints that have the individuals and the cognitive test, the objective cognitive test that we that we perform in our clinic. So this is especially evident in individuals with high level of schooling, individuals with degrees, and when has been very well studied that in these individuals there is a ceiling effect, and they have a lot of background, and they are able to sort of cheat the neuropsychological assessment. So basically, in this test, in the clinic, what we do is to evaluate the delay recall. So we ask the patient to learn, for example, some items, and then after a short period of time, we ask them. But it doesn't take more than 1 hour as maximum to ask them. So we just assess short time memory. And there are some publications, and especially Chris Butler, a friend of mine, he has been studied that in Alzheimer's disease individuals, the information that they learn is forgotten faster than it would be expected, but after a prolonged period of time. Not only one hour is what we assess in the clinic, but days, weeks, or even months. And we are not capturing this. And we suspect that this could be an early sign of Alzheimer's disease, and will help us to discriminate these presymptomatic Alzheimer's disease individuals from healthy agents. And to capture that, we develop a test. Maria has developed a test which is inspired in the face name test, and the idea is to correlate faces with names and other information. And the test has kind of two contexts. One is a party, and you have to learn the face and couple it with the name and the age, and you have 6 individuals that you have to memorize, and then you have to answer. You see the face, and you have to and you have to remember the name and the age. It's pretty complicated test. And the other context is a dinner. You have to couple the face with the name and the dish that this person is going to order. And again, you have 6 faces, and in the end, you have to answer. You have to give the information of the name and the dish. And the thing is that we don't say this to the individuals. What we repeat this test after 1 week. So what we assess is of course the recall, the recognition, because we also test recognition. We see if is correct the association or not. We test the learning rate, how it increased, and or not increase, and we test comparing one trial to the other trial 1 week after the accelerated long-term forgetting. And the idea is to correlate with the CSF biomarkers this information. And in our cohort, in our Valdecilla cohort, which as I said to you, they are all cognitively healthy individuals. So this is the idea. We are starting the testing the individuals, and we will have to. I hope we will be analyzing the data very soon. Okay, and next I would like to show you the work that has been done by Carmen Laje. Carmen Laje is a neurologist. Also, she did a PhD with me. Now she's doing a stage in UCSF in San Francisco. And what Carmen did is to study ocular movement as a marker of neurodegenerative diseases. This is a prototype from as a group, a robotic group of Universidad Politécnica de Madrid. And basically, this is a video oculography machine, and what it does is to film the pupil and track the pupil movements. And we develop some tests and to test the prosaccades, antisaccades, and memory saccades. So the individual have to follow a sign in the screen or have to avoid go to the opposite side in the case of antisaccades, or remember where is the sign and then move the eyes indeed to that position. So this is basically what we did. Of course, this is not a portable device, but the idea, this is a prototype, and the idea is to develop more portable device like this one. And that is one of the group of here the group of robotic is working on. And this is one study that we published with Carmen. What Carmen did first of all was as a proof of principle to use this test in order to differentiate very clear phenotypes, and she tried to differentiate between Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, semantic dementia, and healthy controls from the Valdecilla study. So with this clearly defined population that was also supported by biomarkers, so we were quite sure of the phenotype, Carmen was able to find some patterns of ocular movement, and basically the most interesting finding is that the latency of the saccade was increased in Alzheimer's disease. It was the disease that had much more alteration in the movements. And also we had FDG PET information, and Carmen was able to correlate some of these ocular movement patterns with some areas of hypometabolism in the brain that was also related to areas that are normally associated to these diseases. So both findings were matched. And the most interesting part of this analysis is not published yet, and it was performed in the cognitively healthy individuals from the Valdecilla cohort. We did the same analysis with the video oculography in individuals that had no dementia, that we follow them up. And as I said to you, we have the CSF analysis. So we have the ATM profile of these individuals. So we have the individuals that are biologically healthy, no amyloid, no tau, no neurodegeneration. And we have individuals that have only amyloid in the brain. They have the CSF ratio 40 to 40 pathological, but not tau and not neurodegeneration. And we also have individuals that are in a preclinical Alzheimer's dementia state with amyloid and tau positive in the CSF. So we performed different tests to these individuals, and we found that, for example, for success rate in the different tests, we found no difference. So for the basic analysis, they performed well. But for some of the analyses which were a bit more expressive or more complicated tests, we start finding difference. For example, for the saccadic latencies that, as I said before, is characteristic in Alzheimer's disease, we found that there were differences in the individuals that have preclinical Alzheimer's disease, that the ones that are in blue, they have longer saccadic latencies from different tests. And when we perform more complicated tests, anti-saccade and memory saccades, we found that the spatial accuracy was altered even in individuals with only amyloid, and of course also with preclinical Alzheimer's disease. So very interesting data, still unpublished, but probably will need replication. But we are quite hopeful that this could be an interesting test for early diagnosis of neurodegenerative diseases. And finally, I will end up talking about a final study that it was performed by another PhD student of mine. She's very brave because she's ophthalmologist and she did her PhD with us in Alzheimer's disease. And what we did with Alicia Lopez de Guileta is to study the OCT, the retinal scan, in different similarly to what we did with Carmen, with different neurodegenerative disease, and also in the Valdecilla cohort. In this first study, which was again like a proof of principle, Alicia found that some a thinning, a decrease in thickness in the ganglion cell layer in the retina was associated to Alzheimer's disease, defined by biomarkers. And we were able to find this not only in Alzheimer's disease patients, but also in mild cognitive impairment. So it was a finding that we were able to see also in mild cognitive impairment and gradually increase the atrophy in the Alzheimer's disease patient. So that was our first publication. And the last publication, this is very recently, a couple of months ago, we did the same in the Valdecilla cohort. So again, individuals we have that are cognitively healthy, on average 65 years old. And what we found in these individuals is that, again, we were able to find some correlation between some areas of the ganglional cell layers in the retina. We found thinning of this area, especially the temporal region, and we've correlated this thinning of this layer with tau biomarkers and neurodegeneration biomarkers. Specifically, we saw a correlation between thinning of this retinal layer with phosphorylated tau and total tau and hippocampal volume in these individuals. And we didn't find this with amyloid, but what we found, similarly to what we found in the patient, is that it's a correlation between neurodegeneration in the brain and neurodegeneration in the ganglion cell layer in the retina. And of course, this is also a test that could be performed easily and repeatedly in the outpatient, and it could be also a helpful marker. And that was all. With this, I thank you all you for being here, and of course my group in Valdecilla and all the participants of the Valdecilla study, the participants in the Vallecas Alzheimer study, all the patients, and all the participants of the Vallecas project cohort. And of course, the funding agencies, Instituto Salud Carlos III, la Fundación Reina Sofía, and all the Fundación team. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pascual. Very interesting. So the paper is now open for discussion. As I said earlier, if anyone is interested in making a question to Pascual, please just raise your hand or send me a message through the chat. stating your name and affiliation. I will give you the opportunity to do the question yourself. So while we wait for some questions, let me just remind you that, as I say at the beginning, we will have a special webinar next week, also on Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. This webinar will be on transfer of technology, and it will be presented by the people from the transfer office at CIBER, and everyone is welcome to attend. Also, if you want to look at the upcoming webinars, please just go to our website where the whole program for the next few months is already posted in there. Okay, so again, any questions to Pascual? Okay, if you want to make a question, please, as I said earlier, raise your hand or send me a message through the chat. Okay, I think we have one question from Teresa Iglesias. Teresa, please go ahead.
Hello, Pascual.
Hi, Teresa.
Thanks for your presentation. It's really good to see that things are moving forward slowly. My question is regarding this digital following of patients or putative patients. So how long do you see in the future just being a reality, this following, you know, with digital devices and so?
I think this is really a technology that is exploding. Many cohorts are implementing these new devices, and I think this is going to be. I mean, I don't know, because there are still a lot of steps that have to be taken. But I think this technology is going to be soon available, and I don't. Yeah, I mean, in the clinical ground, it's already there. To get these things to the clinic, we will have to probably to do more real-world studies, like the thing we want to do, to see how they help us to manage the. But this is also going to be very how to say. Very country dependent, very culturally, very so, and I mean, we will have to test it in our individuals, in our society, how it works, how it's accepted. But I'm hopeful that this is going to be very useful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure. Yes. Hopefully, it will be soon used. Yes, we are going towards that. Thank you very much. It's really interesting, your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Teresa. We have another question from Imma. So Imma, please go ahead. Your microphone is off. Hello, Imma. I see your hand raised, but your microphone is still off. I don't see your image, so. I'm receiving a message from Imma in the chat saying that the camera is not open, but we don't need the camera. If you just activate your microphone, you should be able to make your questions yourself. It appears your microphone is still off. Say the microphone, it doesn't work. If you wanna write down the question, I could read it to Pascual. You see the question, Pascual?
I say it's about correlation between tau and sleeping, but which is the specific question? Fine in correlation. Well, we didn't find a correlation between the levels of amyloid and sleep time, either in the crude analysis or either in the multivariate analysis, taking in consideration age and ApoE and gender. We were not able to find it. Of course, this is a bit of complicated issue because sleep could be sleep less could be a consequence and could be also a cause of abnormal proteins in the CSF. So I mean, we don't know exactly if this complex dynamic is affecting our results. We cannot know, but we can show is that in our population we were not able to find a significant correlation with amyloid, and we definitely did very strong with tau.
Okay, thanks, Pascual. Any other questions?
Thanks for your question.
Okay. I don't see any other raised hands or any message through the chat. So we'll wait for a few seconds to see if anyone else is interested in making a question. Okay, you get a question from Nora or Pascual?
You mean the Valdecilla study 65? The cohort, the Valdecilla cohort, the mean age is 65. They are individuals older than 55. That's the inclusion criteria, and the mean age is 65.
Okay. Okay. Any other question? Okay, we haven't.
Over 80, you mean in sleep studies? Not really. No, I think the individuals older than 18 in our Valdecilla cohort, they are a minority, some of them, but we didn't study specifically individuals over 80.
All right, thank you, Nora and Pascual. More questions? I don't see any raised hands or any other message through the chat. So let me give you a last chance if anyone is interested in making a question to Pascual. No? Okay. Well, if so, I think it's time to close the session here. Not before just thanking Pascual for his willingness to share this data with us, for all of you to attend the webinar. Just remind you that we will have a special webinar next week on transfer of technology. And the week after, we have the last webinar before the summer break. But you can check all these in CIBERNED site if you're interested. So thank you very much again, Pascual. Thank you everyone for attending. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Yes.